So let's move on to plate tectonics and biogeography. So according to the theory of plate tectonics, the continents and the seafloors form a relatively thin outer layer of solid rock, the crust, that floats atop a viscous, meaning liquid-like, hot internal mantle. And these plates float around and move around and spread apart from each other, bump into each other, and rub past each other. And we experience that as our seismic events or earthquakes. So continental drift, the movement of these plates, are tied to hotspots of geologic activity, and we live in an area where there's a fair amount of geologic activity along our Pacific coastline, what's often referred to as the Ring of Fire that surrounds the Pacific Ocean and a large plate, the Pacific Plate. And we get earthquakes and volcanic activity as these plates move and collide past each other. So continental drift has had a huge impact on the evolution of life's diversity and distribution and physical characteristics of the land masses, and has altered environments throughout Earth's history that has caused and generated a lot of the diversity of the living organisms on the planet Earth and their distributions, as we'll see. So about 250 million years ago, here's our time scale, present time. That should look familiar. That's the current distribution of the continents and the plates upon the surface of the Earth. 65 million years ago, boundary between Mesozoic and the Cenozoic. 135 million years ago here, and about 250 million years ago between the Paleozoic and the Mesozoic. At that point in time, the plates were arranged such that the land masses were all in contact and forming a supercontinent Pangaea surrounded by a massive ocean. So in this configuration, the animals and plants were able to fully interact with each other. The shorelines were reduced because of a large land mass, and the oceans were deep, which increased the dry continental interior. Many extinctions occurred right at that boundary. So the second chapter of Earth's history really is this Mesozoic era, and that spans from about 250 million years ago to 65 million years ago. Pangaea broke apart, and the continents started to drift apart and move around, and that led to geographic isolation of organisms and plants, and led them along an evolutionary pathway separate from other organisms and plants on different land masses. So as the land masses drifted further and further apart, becoming separate evolutionary regions or arenas for the diversification and divergence of organisms that went along, again, their own evolutionary paths. So continental drift explains the pattern of biogeography, and that's the study of the past and present distributions of animals and plants on the geographic regions on planet Earth, the landmasses, the continents. So for example, Australia separated from the other landmasses about 200 million years ago, and has been separated from the other landmasses for a very long time. So that led to the diversification and evolution of animals on Australia that are not found elsewhere. So, for example, there's over 200 known species of marsupials that are endemic, meaning only found on Australia. So many mass extinctions and resulting rapid explosive diversifications of life that has been recorded. So the fossil record reveals that there's been 5 major massive extinctions over the last 540 million years in Earth's history. So the Permian mass extinction, about 250 million years ago, occurred right about the time that Pangaea formed. about 96% of the marine species and of many terrestrial species, about 70% went extinct, primarily because of the changes in climate at that time. Then the Cretaceous extinction, about 65 million years ago, at the end of the Cretaceous period, has been linked to a large asteroid hitting the planet Earth, causing rapid climatic changes, leading to the extinction of all of the dinosaurs except for some of the smaller ones that evolved into our modern birds, excuse me, and permitted a rapid diversification of the mammals at that time, which prior to 65 million years ago, the reptiles were the dominant terrestrial and aquatic animals, and the mammals were not that prevalent, but they had already evolved. So, did a meteor kill the asteroids? Asteroids, holy cow. Did a meteor kill the dinosaurs? I should read what I write here. So, observation, about 65 million years ago, the fossil record shows that the climate cooled, many plant and animal species died out, and then there was a thin layer of clay that was rich in a rare element called iridium. So below the iridium layer, older, beyond 65 million years ago in the fossil record, many dinosaur fossils were found. Above the iridium layer, which means newer, before 65 million years ago, no dinosaur fossils are found in the upper layers of rock. Dinosaurs went extinct right about this boundary line, 65 million years ago. So why? Well, is the iridium layer a result of the fallout from a huge cloud of dust that billowed into the atmosphere from the impact of a meteor on planet Earth or an asteroid? Iridium is relatively common in meteors and asteroids, but relatively uncommon in Earth's crust. So that's the question. So hypothesis, all right, mass extinction about 65 million years ago, caused by impact of an extraterrestrial object on planet Earth, kicked up a massive cloud, blocked out the sun, caused climate change, immediate climate change, and that dust layer, as the dust settled along the planet, carried a fair amount of iridium with it, and that got encapsulated in that layer, the 65 million year old layer of iridium. So the prediction, well, a huge impact crater about the right age should be found somewhere on Earth's surface. The Earth's surface does get changed and modified through geologic activity, continental drift, etc., but a large enough impact to have caused enough climate change to wipe out the dinosaurs, for example, 65 million years ago, there should be some remnants of that crater on Earth's surface somewhere. So the results, near Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, right upon on the north part of it, a huge crater has been found, or was found, that correlates with the 65 million years ago date, and it's large enough to have created a cloud large enough to block out enough sunlight to change the climate for months, meaning plant life dies, things that eat the plants, the dinosaurs, herbivorous dinosaurs died, and then the dinosaurs that eat the plant-eating dinosaurs, they died out. And that's the Chicxulub crater right on the north shore of current Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. So, large effects from small genetic changes. So we talked about how the expression of alleles or genes leads to the production of polypeptides that become proteins, that leads to certain physical characteristics, the phenotypes of organisms. Well, scientists working with evolutionary biology and developmental biology, sometimes called evo-devo, right, evolution, development, have studied how slight genetic changes, in particular how the genetics are expressed, how the genes or alleles are expressed, can become magnified into massively different structural differences between organisms. So a group of genes called homeotic genes in our genomes these are master control genes, and they're very important for programming the development in organisms, in particular embryologic development and juvenile development, because they control the changes in an organism's form as they develop, how certain structures develop over time by altering the rate of development, basically turning genes on, speeding them up, slowing them down, or turning them off. The timing of gene expression, and then that results in the spatial pattern of organisms. So that applies to things like flies, insects, and even humans. And then this graph here, or this figure here, shows the forelimb of the ancestors of the first terrestrial amphibians, and just showing you how in red is highlighted the digit finger patterns of the forelimbs of these animals. Don't worry about the names, but what's showing you is that depending on how genes are turned on and off will lead to the expression, the development of a certain number of digits, from almost dozens to down to 5, which is the prominent digit pattern in most vertebrates today. And the expression of this phenotype of the number of digits is based on the expression of genes, in particular some of the homeotic genes. So, for example, they've been able to turn on the genes that control teeth development in chickens, which is interesting because chickens don't have teeth. They have a bill or a beak. But chickens are birds, and birds are related to reptiles, and birds are related to dinosaurs that have gone extinct. So they're all reptiles. Most reptiles have teeth. Why do birds not have teeth? Well, evolutionarily, their genes that turn on to develop teeth in birds have been turned off. Well, scientists have been able to turn those genes back on, and they've found that certain mutations in the gene control mechanism essentially allows the genes that control teeth development to be turned on in chickens. So you can get embryological chickens developing that will start to produce teeth. As far as I know, they've never grown these chickens to hatching to see if you have chicken with teeth, because that would be crossing some moral bounds or ethics. But embryologically, they've been able to have chickens with teeth develop by basically switching on some of the controlling homeotic genes. Some weird stuff. So, for example, a normal fruit fly has antennae, 2 eyes, a pair of wings, and 2 little structures called halteres, which used to be wings in their ancestors, like evolutionarily speaking. But now they're basically flight control structures. And if you know flies, they fly really well. So one type of mutation allows the halteres to develop into full-blown wings by modifying the expression of certain homeotic genes, which again are controlling genes that control development of most animals, actually all animals, or another type of mutation that allows legs to grow in the place of antennae, because antennae, wings, halteres, and legs are all appendages, and they are controlled, and their sizes and development are controlled by homeotic genes. So if you shut off the homeotic genes that's supposed to develop antennae, and switch on the homeotic genes that control the development of legs in the head, you can get a mutant fly with legs instead of antennae. So how this applies to larger organisms. So a change in the rate of developmental events. So homeotic genes, when the genes are turned on and expressed, and or when they're turned off and silenced, will cause changes to certain limbs. Remember we talked about homologous limbs or homologous limbs in certain vertebrates like humans and cats and whales and bats.